All rise. Veuillez vous lever. The International Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte.
The confirmation of charges hearing in the case of the prosecutor versus Ali Mohammed Ali Abd-Al-Rahman was held from the 24th to the 26th of May in The Hague before Pre-Trial Chamber 2, composed of Presiding Judge Rosario Salvatore Aitala, Judge Antoine Kessia Mebe Mindua, and Judge Tomoko Akane. At the beginning of the hearing, Presiding Judge Salvatore Aitala explained the purpose of the confirmation of charges hearing.
I remind that at this stage of the pre-trial proceedings, the Chamber will not decide on the guilt or innocence of the suspect. Pursuant to Article 61, Paragraph 7 of the Rome Statute, our duty is to determine whether there exists sufficient evidence to establish substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman has committed the crimes with which he has been charged.
The presiding judge asked the court officer to read out the charges against Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman in the courtroom as they are presented in the prosecution submission of the document containing the charges. In total, Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman is suspected of 31 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity, allegedly committed between August 2003 and at least April 2004 in Darfur, Sudan. In her statement, the ICC prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, highlighted that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman is more commonly known by his alias, Ali Kushaib. She has also said that he played a crucial role in committing alleged crimes.
Feared and revered in equal measure as the colonel of colonels. He was a senior leader of the infamous Janjaweed militia in the Wadi Salih and Mujar localities during the charged period. During this period, Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman and his Janjaweed militia forces, acting with military and police forces of the then government of the Sudan, attacked predominantly fur towns and villages. In the course of these attacks, in locations such as Courtroom and Bindisi, between about 15 and about 16 August of 2003, civilians were attacked, raped, and murdered. Their homes and villages were destroyed. Thousands were forcibly displaced, and many fled to larger towns, desperately seeking sanctuary. In these larger towns, rather than finding protection, civilians were rounded up, arrested, and detained in various locations. In these circumstances, in Mukja in late February and early March of 2004, and then shortly after in Delij, men were loaded onto vehicles, taken a short distance away, and executed in cold blood. Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman was present at and directly participated in these callous crimes. The evidence shows that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman was a knowing, willing, and energetic perpetrator of these crimes. He played a crucial role, leading attacks, committing murders, and ordering other murders.
Over the course of 3 days, the judges heard oral submissions from the prosecution, the legal representatives of the victims, and the defense. The prosecution team presented evidence that, in their view, demonstrates substantial grounds to believe that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman committed the alleged crimes. The legal representatives of the victims supported the position of the prosecution. Lead counsel for the defendant, Cyril Lauchi, stressed in his oral submission that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman was not a colonel of colonels, as the prosecution claimed. He portrayed his client as a pharmacist, a normal citizen who sold medicine at the time of the events. He argued that the court had the wrong man before it.
I will just conclude by asking you, in light of everything that I have said, that the defense asked Honourable Pre-Trial Chamber 2 to conclude that the Office of the Prosecutor has not given evidence to support reasonable grounds to believe that Mr. Ali Mohammed Ali Abd-Al-Rahman behind me is Ali Kushaib, or that he was involved in any way whatsoever with the events referred to in the charges. He does not have the profile of other known Janjaweed leaders. He is neither Nazir nor related to a Nazir, nor is he an officer in the army. He is a simple citizen who sold medicine from his pharmacy in Garcilla at the time of the events. The Office of the Prosecutor has not given any evidence or information in the slightest as to the origin of the authority that it alleges that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman, as Ali Kushaib, would have had during the events. The Office of the Prosecutor has not established the chain of command, nor the respective areas of competence and authority in a structure that it proposes to admit as structured and hierarchical. No written order, no military booklets, no evidence whatsoever. Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman has manifestly received none of the profits, whether it be money or power, that the other Janjaweed leaders enjoyed, such as Mr. Hameti or Musa Hilal. The evidence and the case file of the prosecutor contains great amounts of contradictory information as to his age, his tribe, when he would have become leader of the Janjaweed or Agid al-Oghada. We have different information. It doesn't concord on these different points. And with regards to his physical description, they do not coincide either. He's often stated to be 17 years younger. He does not have any piercing on either of his ears. He has no ritual scar on his face. He does not have any clinical sign, either of a history of addiction to alcohol, as is the sense of the word Kushaib, as that word would suggest. And that is the reason why, principally and primarily, and that was the point of my presentation today, I would ask you not to confirm the charges, which, furthermore, as regard the demonstration made by the defence today, this means in no way that the crimes described by the Office of the Prosecutor were not committed. But what it does mean only is that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman did not participate, or at least that the evidence of his participation has not been sufficiently demonstrated to bring him to trial.
The question of the identity of the suspect was raised by all parties and participants in the closing arguments. Trial lawyer Kamran Chowdhury presented evidence including witness testimonies that demonstrate that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman is indeed Ali Kushaib. Moreover, as the trial lawyer emphasized, Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman himself provided the Office of the Prosecutor with evidence of his nickname.
On the 20th of March 2020, several months in advance of his surrender, Mr. Ali Abd-Al-Rahman provided an unsolicited video message to the Office of the Prosecutor. In the video, he can be heard to introduce himself in Arabic by both his legal name as well as the alias Ali Kushaib. The defense provides no explanation for this. I shall play you the video, and that's at ERN DAR OTP 02160119. Your Honours will be able to note from the video that at the start, Mr. Ali Abd-Al-Rahman says in Arabic the following: Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ana Ali Muhammad Ali Abd al-Rahman al-Mulakkab Kushayb. This translates as, in the name of Allah, the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. I am Ali Muhammad Ali Abd-Al-Rahman, and my nickname is Kushayb. I shall now play the video, and if I could just ask your assistants to see whether they're ready.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أنا علي محمد علي عبد الرحمن الملقب بكوشيب.
The legal representatives of the victims, Paulina Masida, Nasser Amin, and Emel Clooney, conveyed the victims' hopes that the judges will make the right decision and order the trial.
Victims have waited for justice for almost 20 years, and they are following these proceedings. As you can imagine, the main line of arguments developed by the defense yesterday was particularly unacceptable for victims, and they have asked me to convey the following views and concerns. First, on the fact that Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman is not Ali Kushayb. All of them, participating victims and persons who are still applicants, recognize the suspect as the person who inflicted on them or on their family members sufferings and caused their displacement, leaving them destitute today. I aver, Mr. President, Your Honors, that this identification by victims is not to be regarded as evidence. But can such a large number of people really be mistaken?
سيد الرئيس حضرات القضاة.
Mr. President, Your Honors,
الضحايا
the
وأصوات النساء
souls of the victims, the voices of the women
وقعوا
who have fallen under the power and the authority and the violence that have been committed, call upon us all, and they are now hovering over this courtroom and over this chamber and calling for us to allow for the trial of Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman. There is very strong evidence to this, and this strong evidence was offered by the Office of the Prosecutor. And this evidence actually show that Mr. Ali Abd-Al-Rahman, known as Mr. Ali Kushayb, has committed all of these crimes which are mentioned in the pre-confirmation brief, and he has carried out all of the crimes which have been mentioned in the charges of the Office of the Prosecutor. And therefore, as a representative of the victims, I call upon you and urge you to put this case forward for trial. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, you have heard from the Office of the Prosecutor of the compelling grounds to commit this case to trial. And in my earlier submissions, I sought to illustrate the extent to which the views of the victims accord with the prosecution's case. As the evidence shows, the suspect in this case was not only commanding his men from afar, nor merely present, but as the prosecution put it on Monday, he was a knowing, willing, and energetic perpetrator who would show no mercy to his victims. We have now heard a detailed account about his actions, commanding thousands of troops, choosing the routes for fighters, ordering them to shoot and kill, supervising arrests and the loading of cars to execution sites, beating detainees with his axe and whip, and when he felt like it, killing them. We heard his words, prepare their graves, just shoot, just kill. Repeat for these people, maybe there are some you have missed. Don't leave me one person alive. Wipe out and sweep. Your Honours, these are merely illustrations. and my submission is that the evidence is more than sufficient to meet the burden required at confirmation.
The pre-trial chamber shall deliver its written decision within 60 days of the date on which the confirmation hearing ended. The defense and the prosecution cannot directly appeal this decision. However, they can request authorization from the pre-trial chamber to appeal it. Mr. Abd-Al-Rahman was transferred to the ICC's custody on the 9th of June 2020, after surrendering himself voluntarily in the Central African Republic. His initial appearance before the ICC took place on the 15th of June 2020.